You are listening to the Self-Trust Solution Podcast with Dawn Leday, episode number 119. Leadership isn't just a title. It's how you show up. Whether you're aiming for a leadership position, trying to stand out in your career, or simply wanting to grow into your full potential, the key is leading yourself first. Welcome back. Today, I'm talking with Wendy Burbridge, high-performance career coach and author who helps ambitious professionals transition from overworking to leadership brilliance. She's here to share what holds people back from leadership roles, how to showcase your leadership skills before you even have the title, and the mindset shifts that make all the difference. Let's dive in. Welcome, Wendy. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so you are a high performance career development coach, and you really talk about how leadership is not just about leading others. There's more important things involved here. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working in learning development for a long time. And one of the things that I discovered pretty quickly is that a lot of people really aspire to roles in leadership or they want to be in higher level positions, but then they don't get picked and they wonder why. They're like often left without a lot of feedback as to what's happened. And when we start to work together, we dig into it a little bit. And the first thing that we discover is that they're missing the cardinal rule of leadership is that before you can lead others, you have to ultimately be leading yourself. You have to be responsible for leading, the person who you're looking back in the mirror every day. So I think that's the number one thing that's so important that a lot of people miss. And when I work with people one-on-one, it comes up all the time. I worked for this company for X years and I didn't get the job, or I've applied for so many jobs and haven't got it. And when we really dig into the nuts and bolts of what's really holding them back, you could see that individual is really falling short on themselves first. And when we work together and really that person starts to step into that position of leading themselves, and they really start to work a bit more diligently on demonstrating their leadership skills, even while in an individual contributor role, then people start to see them as a leader. And then they begin to grow and develop and then move into those higher level positions. But unfortunately, we work in a day and age now where so many people are afraid to give feedback and they stay really tight lipped when it comes to giving feedback on either performance or job interviews, which is really unfortunate when you're an employee working with a company. And that's why it's really helpful, I think, to have a coach to help you work through those things, because that's my job, is to be honest and to give you the feedback, but also to help you to notice if you're getting the results that you want or not. And if you're not, then what do you do? And if you're an individual looking to get into a leadership role, I'd say the first thing is really focusing on leading yourself.
Good point. I love how you said we have to lead ourselves before we lead others, because that's how people start to see us as a leader without us having to just say we're leaders.
Yeah.
Like by example.
Yeah. And I can think of a key example of this that I see is that people oftentimes in their head have a lot of ideas, but they don't take the next step to actually share those ideas with their peers or their supervisors or their managers or directors. Sometimes these people might even be introverts. So maybe they're not naturally to speak up in meetings, but understanding that they need to, if they're uncomfortable talking in meetings, they need to create a strategy around communicating so their great ideas are getting out there. And that's something that I see that's really holding people back, is that they're not being seen as a leader yet. So when they go to interview for these other jobs, people aren't naturally making the connection. But when they're able to be a little bit more deliberate in that communication and get their ideas out there and people can see that they're adding value, then it's a lot easier sell when you get to an interview or promotion opportunity.
Hmm. So you mentioned doing assessments of some sort that becomes an important part of the process. Share more about that.
Yeah, so I think assessments are a fantastic tool in the leadership development process because it gives us an opportunity to understand ourselves. Sometimes assessments can give us an opportunity to better understand people who we work with. I'm certified in a number of different assessments from Myers-Briggs and emotional intelligence, and obviously life coach school certification. But one that I use quite frequently in leadership development is the leadership circle profile. And I use this in a couple capacities, and I find it's really helpful for folks who are wanting to develop because the leadership circle profile, first level that I do with people is the self assessment. So it's really important to understand how we see ourselves because we need to be aware of our strengths and our opportunities. We need to see if we're operating in our creative space or in our reactive space. If we're operating in our creative space, we're really actualizing in our leadership. We're going at a rate that's sustainable in a way that shows that we really care about people who are in our environment and getting results in a really productive, supportive way, and just really leaving a positive wake behind us. If we're operating in the reactive, it's usually very stressful. We operate with a lot of tension. When we're working with people, they often see that we're in fight or flight. We're really stressed out. We're going to deadline. And that's not how we want people to be on an ongoing basis. So the assessments are a great tool because once we can see where we are just from our own self assessment, then we can really see what our areas of strength are, and we have that evidence that this is actually how I am. We can also see the areas for improvement. And maybe you're really great at doing one thing, but your strength is cutting you short. And once you become aware of those things that you could be potentially be doing better, or things you should essentially stop doing, then it makes that leadership effectiveness so much better. So the first step is really having that awareness, going through the self assessment. But when we go full circle, we really look at engaging with peers, engaging with coworkers, engaging with your leadership team, and even direct reports if you have them to really get that full 360 feedback. And that's a really robust tool because at that point, you're having people who are able to really give you some insights on how you're perceiving your organization. And you might be thinking your organization or the spaces in which you operate. So you might be seeing that there's something that you do pretty well. And everybody else might be actually saying that you're doing it incredibly well. Or people might be saying that you're actually not doing it as well as you think you do. And that's really interesting because I've noticed that in the situation where, in the context where I use this assessment, a lot of times I work with people and they're already really talented and they just don't even realize how talented they are. And they maybe self rate them a little bit modestly. And then they get their feedback from their teams and they're able to see how everyone perceives them. And when we look at the proof that this isn't just what people are saying, that we have the proof that when it comes to a deliverable standpoint, that person is creating the results that are expected, that they're overperforming, over delivering, and just doing so exceptionally well. It then becomes a matter of really helping that individual align with that state of being and stepping into that knowledge of the things that they do well and understanding that they're actually operating at a higher capacity. And of course, I'd like to say that's the easy part because you've already got somebody who's a top performer, but that identity component can be really tricky for some people because they might be thinking that they're here and in reality, they're really like already at a 10.
Yes. How do you help someone manage or utilize when they perhaps think that they're operating at a level that's higher than what the feedback indicates?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And one of the things that I always ask is really like how this is showing up at work for them. And it's pretty telling when you've got the feedback from a team of people who are saying, in your case, you're saying, I've got someone who's maybe underperforming according to what their peers and leadership and their feedback contributors are saying. In that instance, we look at really what the the definitions are of those specific terms. We look at what high performance looks like in that area, and we look at what low performance looks like in that area. And we look at specific comments that are provided from the team. So that's the one benefit of the whole 360 feedback is that not only are people rating, but they're providing written feedback. So we can see exactly specific examples that help that individual see, like this would be an example of a time when you were scoring low in this area, that kind of thing. And one, you have to be operating from an open standpoint. You can't be somebody who's completely closed off to learning about yourself and to hearing about areas for improvement, right? So you have to have an individual who's open and willing. And often that's the case that people are open and willing, but sometimes there are blind spots. And in those instances, we really just talk about how it shows up at work for them, how it shows up now in those various different competency areas and what it would be like if they were showing up in a higher performing way. And so we would go through specific examples of how you're showing up now in this competency looks like this. But if you were showing up in a really high performance leadership effectiveness way, you would be showing up like this. And we provide a different example and then ask if they understand the difference between those two. And often it's very insightful when we can provide a comparative in that way, because a lot of times people will, of course, want to defend and say, I'm like this because of my organization, that, or this is actually how it works. But if you can help them separate and see, okay, I hear you. And that's a great example. And if you were high performing, there wouldn't be the need to defend. It would be more of an acceptance for where you are and desire into growth and understanding the steps needed to take to get to that next level. Does that make sense and answer your question there?
Absolutely. It sounds like one is continually connecting to the data so
Mhm.
that it removes the drama, if you will, from it, because there will be naturally, in many cases, some defensiveness or some justification, but inviting them to come back to the ability to learn from themselves, to really look at it in a way that can enhance growth and evolution as a leader.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing there is just that openness and that desire to grow and develop. And not everybody has that. A lot of people are more attached to their excuses than they are in their desire to grow. But when you get to someone who is really so much more committed in their desire for growth, then they realize that the most important thing is that feedback and being effective in their leadership. And if what they think they're doing is right, but other people are clearly showing them that there's a misalignment. Having that openness to say, okay, how can I look at this differently is so key.
Super powerful. What a gift to be able to look at strengths and weaknesses and opportunities for growth, but also to recognize like, where am I more fixed on my excuses or my justifications? Where would I rather be right than be effective?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's super interesting. So, what's
Yes.
one thing our listeners could do today to become a better leader?
Mhm. I think that's one, to understand your strengths and really operate in your strengths. And I think one thing that people get really distracted with is all the things that they have to do in their day. And oftentimes we forget what our superpower is and what it would be like to actually operate in that flow. And so, one of the challenges that I often give people is to just take a minute and think about the thing that you do exceptionally well. What is your superpower and what is the thing that you bring to the table, the thing that you do really well? And how would your day be different if you were able to spend your time in the flow of doing that and really optimize your day so you can set up, like, I don't know if it's, if you've got a real specific schedule, maybe you can do it one day a week, maybe you can do it several days a week, maybe you can do it 80% of the day, but just really taking that time to focus on your strengths and just notice the difference and notice the difference of your individual performance and notice the difference of the people who are around you and the response of your team and the people that you work with. I think that's the number one thing, is getting clear on your strengths and operating in that flow.
Yes. So often we're focused on what we want to fix, but we're not doing well. And we're spending so much energy there when There's so much to be gained by focusing on our strengths and operating more within them.
100%. And I think a lot of times people really get a little bit over fixated on all the things that they have to correct. Like, we're not perfect. No one ever gets it 100% right. Like, we're not doing the work that we do today because we're perfectionists at everything. It's because we understand that there are unique skills and talents and gifts that we bring to the world. And we spend most of our time doing those things. And when you see the result that you get, by being able to commit to something and doing it from the space that is your natural gifts and talents, it's such a game changer. And it really just creates such a different life experience, not only for the individual, but for all of the people around them as well. So spend time doing that as opposed to trying to slug your way through something that's like really difficult. Like for me, it's like spreadsheeting. At the end of the day, I'm like 100%, I'm going to use ChatGPT and whenever I can, any other resource to do those little nitty gritty details because I want to be spending my day interacting with people, dialoguing, helping them grow, helping them succeed. And when I'm spending my day in that flow, I just feel like for me, my world is a better place. So I would just focus on the thing that you do really well and don't get stuck in the weeds on the things that you can improve on. We all got things to improve on, but really just focus on your unique gifts.
Mm, well said.
Thanks so much, Don. Appreciate you having me today.
What will you take away from today's episode? Here are a few gems that stood out for me. Leadership starts with leading yourself before you lead others. If you're not getting the roles you want, focus on how you're showing up today. Leadership is not just about ideas, it's about communicating them effectively. And self awareness is key to growth, and assessments can help reveal your strengths and blind spots. And finally, spend more time operating in your strengths rather than over focusing on fixing your weaknesses. Wendy, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. If you're listening and want to take the next step in your leadership journey, go check out wendyburbridge.com and her many resources to step into your greatest leadership path. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and share it. Your support helps more people discover the power of self-trust and intentional leadership. Thanks for listening, for investing in yourself, and for showing up in self-trust. I'll see you next time on the Self-Trust Solution Podcast. The best way to get what you want is to grow your self-trust. And the best way to grow your self-trust is in going after what you want the right way. And the Self-Trust Lab is here to help you do just that. With the proven 3E success method, you'll cultivate unshakable self-trust while making what you want inevitable through practical tools, personalized methods, and master level coaching. Let's turn self-trust into your superpower and success into your everyday reality. Join us today at theselftrustcoach.com/the Self-Trust Lab.